Hi, so right now we're actually done joining the sides of the blouse using 1.5 inch sewing allowance only on both sides. We had to make sure that the front edge touched the back edge and it's looking so clean. So after doing that, we ironed it, and you can see that the shoulder seam shifted because of the armhole dart that we used. So the shoulder seam is no longer on that shoulder line. So now that's it for the blouse. Now we're going to construct our sleeve. We're going to construct a basic sleeve, and it's from this basic sleeve that we're able to derive all forms of sleeves for blouses, gowns, etc. So first we're going to get the length of our sleeve. Our normal length of sleeve, that's for the place that will be covered by the nets, I want it to be 13 inches, but I'm going to be adding an extra 1 inch, half inch for the upper part and then half inch for the lower part. So now for the width of what I'm constructing, I'll be marking round bust divided by 4. So the round bust is 34, so we're going to have 34 divided by 4. We're going to have 8.5 inches. So that's how we're going to get our sleeve box. So the length is the length of your sleeve, the width of the box, or let me call it a rectangle since it's not of equal sides. So the width of the rectangle is round bust divided by 4. So mine is 8.5. That's the one I'm working with. So basically I already had to fold the paper. I wanted the paper to be on the fold so that I can have a different back side and a different front side. So now I'm going to mark the bicep distance, which is round bust divided by 8. So you're going to start from the upper part to measure the round bust divided by 8, then you mark it. So this line I just marked right now is my bicep line. So I'll just use a metal rule to connect like so to the bicep line. So whatever it is you have on this line, I mean this slanted line, now you're going to measure it and divide it into 4 equal parts. Okay, we'll mark, so assuming we have 10 for example, we're going to divide it into 10 divided by 4. We're going to have 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. So now I actually had about 9.5, so I had to divide it into 4 equal parts and mark. So the marking is very important. So on the first part, that's the first part where you marked. Now there are so many methods of working on sleeves, so many different methods. The most important thing is, does your sleeve fit? So now we're going to, from that point now on, still on the line, from the line there, we'll mark 0.75 inches upwards above the line. Then on the final point, the final demarcating point, we'll mark 0.5. The first one was 0.75 inches, the final one is 0.5. So we connect. Most times if you notice I don't do, okay, so just the midline you cross over, then touch this mild curve. Most times if you notice I rarely use French curves, and that's because it's not always too important. If you can use your hand and get the same thing, there's really no need for French curve. So on the final part, you're going to mark your round sleeve measurement at the full length of your sleeve. So the full length of the sleeve, that's where the sleeve is getting to, is actually at the elbow, and the round elbow measurement is 10 inches. So I had to mark 10 inches divided by 2 plus 1 inch sewing allowance. So before ever we connect to the armhole, what we'll do is that we're going to measure the round armhole of the blouse. I don't want this blouse, I don't want the sleeve pleated, I don't want to have any excesses, and I don't want to have any shortages either. So I'm going to start from one end to the other to measure the round armhole of the sleeve, like the round armhole of the blouse. Whatever I get, assuming I get 19.5, I'll divide 19.5 into 2 equal parts. So in this particular case, I was able to get 9.75 as the half. So now that I got 9.75, I had to add an extra 1 inch as sewing allowance, because you still need your sewing allowance even if your curve aligns with that of the armhole of the blouse. So now I had to go ahead to connect it. And voila, we are practically done with the first stage of drafting of the blouse. Next thing we're going to do is that we're going to cut it out with our scissors, and just watch the way I cut it along the curves. See, there is really no hard and fast rule about it. Find out what works for you and then stick to it. You might have already been using different methods of sleeve, but this is actually what works perfectly for us. So now I'm going to call this part the back piece. I'll call this part the back piece. Then you see this curve here, I'll divide it into two, because the back doesn't need to have that much of a slope along this upper line. So when I divide it into two, I'm going to cut off the other part. So now we have our back, the back part of our sleeve, and we have the front part of our sleeve. So I'm going to use this sleeve pattern to cut exactly two sleeves on. I'm going to use this sleeve pattern to cut exactly two sleeves on the fabric, that's on the pink fabric. So now, speaking of the completion of my sleeve, I don't exactly want a totally simple sleeve. I want the final end to be like a tied ruched sleeve. Okay, so this is the pink fabric I already cut out with the pattern, the two of them. So I want to have a tied ruched sleeve at the base. When I say tied, I mean layers. Layered ruched sleeve. When you hear ruched, it means rough. So I had to cut out about 52 inches by 14 inches, and it is not fixed. I just worked with how wide my material was. I wanted something a little bit dramatic, so that's why I cut out something that big. If you want to cut out something bigger, it's still fine. So from the upper edge I had to mark 2 inches. Then after marking 2 inches, from the place the 2 inches stopped, I had to mark 5 inches. After the 5 inches, I decided if I wanted to mark another thing, and then that is it. Just note, I marked 2 inches first, then I marked 5 inches after the 2 inches. Just have those two in mind. So I did the same thing for the other pieces. So I had to mark in front. So for this other pink fabric, I had to join the two sides using the allotted sewing allowance, which is 1 inch sewing allowance. So before ever I start doing any stitches on this one, I'm going to turn to the wrong side of this fabric and then run a stitch. I basically run the stitch from the base. Since the base doesn't need weaving, I would have needed to weave or serge this fabric. I should have actually done that, but I don't have a serger in my home office, so I wouldn't be doing that. So before ever you start your ruching and all that, we are going to join the sides together. But your ruching requires that you hold that point to that place you marked 2 inches, and you hold the part where you marked 5 inches. That is just it. You can mark it on any part of the fabric because you want it to be scattered. So this particular one, I just said, okay, there's still a lot of space underneath, I can just hold haphazardly as far as it doesn't touch the part where I want to put elastic. So you're going to hold all through. So you're going to hold it on the surface, like you will not hold it on the wrong side of the fabric. You will hold it on the surface. That is the only way the beauty will come out. So but before you ever start holding it, you have to join the sides using 1/2 inch, just like I've done. Then you can serge the edges, then fold the base. I'm folding the base by 0.75 inches and running a stitch because I'm going to need to have a casing for my elastic. So that's the casing I'm going to stitch for my elastic. So I have already stitched the casing for my elastic, and I've left a very little space on the base where I'm going to insert my elastic using a safety pin. So that's the space. So for the upper part now, so I've already done the tied ruched thing, holding the 2 inches and the 5 inches. No really long stitch, you just hold it. It's just like stitch this thing together for me. Just hold it a little bit, nothing long, nothing dramatic, just holding it all together. In fact, you can even do it with a hand needle. The only reason I didn't do it with hand needle was that it was going to take a lot of my time since my fabric was long. So for the upper part, you're going to gather it. You're going to gather it so that you can reduce the measurements, and the measurements will be able to fit perfectly into the base of the pink sleeve. So you see how I'm gathering it? So you just pass your thread, and by the time you're done gathering it, by the time you're done putting your thread through, please do not tie any end. Just drag your thread on your needles, drag it nicely until you're able to get the size that will fit into the base of the pink sleeve. Now you can see that the beauty is gradually coming out. Well, you're going to see the more of the beauty by the time we're done fixing the elastic on the base. I mean, it's so classy. This is one of my favorite sleeves, the tied wrist sleeve. So if you come across this video and you've seen this little secret, be happy. I might as well prioritize this video soon. Okay, so we are going to attach the base to this, and we're going to turn to the wrong side of the green fabric, hold it to the front of the pink. We're going to pin it all round. And after pinning it, we're going to run a 1/2 inch stitch to hold it at the base. So after pinning, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and run a stitch through it. You can already see how beautiful it's coming out, how beautiful it's beginning to look. So after running the stitches, this is how it's going to look. Remember, we've not attached the elastic, so I'm looking at the sleeve to note the parts where I trimmed off already, and I'm seeing that it's falling on the wrong side. So it's actually going to be on the other side of the blouse, not on the place I initially placed it. So we're going to attach it using 0.5 inch seam allowance. So we're going to attach it to this side, and then the other undone sleeve is going to be attached to the other side. So we're gradually coming to the end of this blouse making series. So next thing we're going to do is that we're going to hold the armhole together, and then we're going to notch the new shoulder points. Your original shoulder point was that same point, but right now it has already changed, like I told you earlier. So we're also going to get the center of this pink cord sleeve, and we're going to pin the center to the center together, and we're going to join the sleeves using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. So we're going to join it, and it's going to look all classy and very neat. You make sure that the edge of the pink fabric should align with the edge of the armhole curve, okay, so that it turns out to be very neat. So on this armhole area, because I want my sleeve to balance at all times, I just have to make a slight cut. so that it just slants, it looks slanty. And that's one thing that a lot of people do not do, because by the end of the day your sleeve does not balance very well. So you balance it up, and it can also help you when you open it up on stitching. It's going to come out neatly. What you also have to do is that you weave by the end of the day. Okay, so you're going to run your 1/2 inch stitch using a sewing machine all through. Don't forget to practice and send pictures and videos of your completed work. I mean, this is really beautiful if only you can practice it. The sewing of a simple darted gown is 100%, like 100%, the same method as the sewing of a simple darted blouse. It follows the same procedures, the same sewing allowances, everything. Like, we've already drafted the pattern, so it's just for you to cut the fabric and you start stitching. So thank you for watching. See you in the next training video. The next video you're going to be seeing is a video of this blouse rocked. See ya. Bye.
Chopping and spending the cash. There is no mercy for money. Maka why? Oji the cash. Bilonia, Onyeji cash. Chopping and spending the cash. There is no mercy for money. Maka why? Oji the cash. When you get the cash, you gonna say life with this sweet everything in the yes sir, because you carry the naira. Maka no ba maka, oh man, ajoka bilonia soka. Maka no ba maka, oh man, ajoka bilonia soka. Bilonia.